Welcome tonight to our community meeting, our first one that we've held up in the Panther Lake area, and we're happy to be here. And we appreciate your turnout. So thank you very much. I would like to talk about a few of the current events that are going on in the city, and then what you'll get is an update from the different commanders where they will talk about the crime in the different areas of the city, providing a little bit of information. Then you'll get a demonstration on how to use crimereports.com. So it's crime information that citizens can get at any time. So Sheila will come up and do that. We'll talk a little bit about National Night Out and our Community Citizens Academy. And then we'll finish up with some questions and answers, if you have any, about what's going on in the community, specifically with the police department. So I would like to start to hit with a few areas. And I think the important one, or an important area that I want to start with, has to do with crime and the perception of crime. And sometimes we hear a lot, my goodness, the crime in Kent is bad, it's out of control, what are you doing about crime? And you're going to hear a lot tonight about what we call intelligence-led policing. And it's a philosophy of policing that Assistant Chief Bourne's going to go through some specifics and explain what that's all about. But as you can see, going back just to 2009, there's been a steady decrease in the amount of crime in the city of Kent. And in fact, according to the latest numbers from the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, the crime rate, which is crime per 1,000 residents in the city of Kent, actually went down by 16% in the city of Kent as you compare it from what the crime rate was in 2010 versus what the crime rate was in 2011. So really, that's good news. And if we were to go back further to 2008, 2007, 2006, you would see a continual, each year, the crime is going down. And I can tell you as residents of Kent, the very good news is the city of Kent in 2011 saw a larger reduction in crime rate, I believe, than any city in the state of Washington. So our city is doing very well. I know we've had a lot of residential burglaries and some other crimes, but as it compares to years in the past, we are really, really a safe city. We're a very good city, and you really should feel good about living or being in the city of Kent. So, I just think that that graph is important for you to see or to understand the state of crime in the city. Yes, sir?
Do you attribute that to the fact that Kent became a whole city incorporated and got more police protection instead of the county?
Well, I don't know exactly what to attribute it to. I believe the question was, do we attribute that to this area, this annexation area, basically being policed by the city police department rather than with more officers rather than fewer officers from before? And that's a very good question. I think that that probably plays a role in it, but as you'll hear a little later on, I don't want to steal all of Assistant Chief Bourne's thunder, but we do a type of policing that isn't done by a lot of agencies throughout the state, and it's called intelligence-led policing, and we really focus on the high-impact offenders. We know that a very few number of bad guys commit a very large number of crimes. So when we talk about neighborhood response teams, and we talk about special investigations units, and we really work to engage our patrol division, we focus on those what we call high-impact offenders, those few people or few crime groups that commit the vast majority of crimes, and when we have them in custody, they're not committing crimes in our city. So we really focus on that a lot.
May I ask you one more thing?
Absolutely.
I live in Canyon View Estates. It's a retired mobile home community off of 108th, and we've seen an increase in crime, in home invasion, and different things in the last 2 years, and we don't know why.
And we're going to talk about that. And Commander Camerzell, who's in charge of this area, we're seeing an increase in residential burglaries or break-ins into your house in the city of Kent and throughout the state of Washington, throughout the Puget Sound region. That is an epidemic that's going on throughout the entire state, and we're not immune to that. However, we are, I think, unique in that we are doing some specific things to address those criminals that are in Kent to better and more effectively deal with it. So, yes, we're not immune from it, but we are aware of it, actively, aggressively going after it. So, very good questions. Thank you. I want to highlight a case. We talked about what would be a few interesting cases to highlight for this meeting to discuss. And we had a pretty serious crime recently up on the West Hill. But I want to talk a little bit about that crime just to highlight and tell you a story about how police work works and put the pieces of the puzzle together. We had an investigation. It was late at night where a woman was raped. She had been on a bus up on the West Hill of Kent, and it was a terrible situation. Our officers responded and took a report, took a very good report, got detailed information, and the case got referred to detectives. So one of our detectives got the case, Steve Kelly. He's been a detective for a long time, and not only is he one of the finest in our agency, I believe he's one of the finest in the state. He's also a polygraph examiner, excellent investigator. He got the case, he started working it. We tried everything. Our patrol officers were going out and contacting, looking at homeless camps, looking at various different areas, trying to find the suspect. And they had no luck. So they didn't give up, but Detective Kelly went to Des Moines because it was close to Des Moines, and he actually contacted King County Metro, and he found a video from the King County Metro bus that looked like the description provided of the suspect. So Detective Kelly took that information, ran it by our officers, nobody recognized him, went to the Des Moines Police Department, was talking with some of their detectives, and they called in some officers, and one of the officers recognized the person on the bus. Gosh, that person looks like this. We actually went and got a sketch done also. So we had a sketch of the suspect provided by the victim. We had a picture from the bus that kind of matched the sketch. Then the detectives went to Des Moines, and a Des Moines officer said, gosh, that looks like this person, and he provided the name. And he lives up in Des Moines, but very close to the scene where the crime occurred. So Detective Kelly did a little bit of research and found that the person was currently in custody down at the Regional Justice Center on some unrelated crimes. So we went down to the jail and just as a cold shot conducted an interview with the suspect. And at that time, he really wasn't a suspect. He kind of matched the description, and he looked good for it, but you never know. And after an interview, a pretty extensive interview, that person confessed, admitted to committing the crime, and gave specific information that only the person who committed that crime would know, because we didn't let all that information out. We kept it confidential. So we're fairly certain, it's fairly certain that that suspect, that person, was responsible for that crime. But I think it highlights what it takes to put together a pretty serious crime. It takes good police work from the very beginning. It takes cooperation. It takes communication with many different agencies in many different ways. And then good old-fashioned police work where you can conduct an interview and get a confession with essentially no physical evidence and solve a very serious crime and get a dangerous person off the street. So that was outstanding work, a good example that just happened within the last couple weeks of really great work that's being done by your police department. So it was really, really a positive thing. Something specific now, another example, something very specific to your neighborhood. I don't know if you recall, gosh, has it been a little over a month ago? There was the shooting up in the area of 208th and the Benson, up by the Albertson Safeway. And if you weren't aware, our detectives conducted a very extensive investigation on that case and identified who the suspect was. And then our specialized team, our neighborhood response team, our special investigations unit, our gang unit, set up surveillance on known locations where that suspect was known to frequent. And once again, within days of that crime being committed, our police department and our officers, in cooperation with our own officers and other officers from throughout the region, identified where the suspect was. We had to call in the SWAT team because he wasn't very cooperative. But finally, we were able to talk him out, and he did come out of the house, and we were able to safely resolve that situation and take that person into custody responsible for that shooting. So I can tell you the victim who was shot was a Kent resident, not a gang member, but he was a little bit of a troubled youth. And the person who shot him was a young man from Seattle, and he was a confirmed documented gang member. So it was a very positive thing that we were able to get him off the street. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I live in that complex. I've been in Kent for over almost 30 years now. I've raised my kids here. This incident that you're talking about has made me decide I want to move out of Kent. I don't want to have my kid walking down the street and get shot by accident. So I saw those guys. I was walking down the street. I was going past Jack in the Box, and I saw about 10 guys that looked to me. I don't want to profile. That's the problem. Okay, I wanted to call the police when I saw them because they looked like they were going to do something, but I felt like I was profiling them, even though they looked gang member types. So I didn't do anything, and I felt like if I called them, what would have happened anyways? They probably would have told me, you know, there's no crime, so why are you even calling us? So I felt like I couldn't protect myself or the community because of the whole quote-unquote profiling thing. So I watched those guys walk up the road across the street, and as soon as I got home to my apartment, I heard all the cops and all the stuff. And it made me look at apartments that same night to move.
And I'm sorry that you don't feel safe. I can tell you, and what we really encourage, thank you, Joe, is for people to call 911 when they see or feel something suspicious. And because if you were to call 911, the police will respond and they will check it out. And I think there's a perception that, hey, if we call the police, they won't come, or the police are too busy, or it's a waste of their time, I don't want to bother them. And that's clearly not the case. If we have a chance to prevent something, we would much rather prevent something before a crime occurs. So we will have officers respond. And we talk about that, one second, sir. We talk about that when you're in your neighborhoods and you see a suspicious person or a suspicious vehicle or anything like that. We encourage our citizens to call 911, and we will respond as quickly as we can get there. Sometimes we're busy, sometimes we're on calls, but as quickly as we can, we will respond and try our best. And if we can prevent any crime, we will. Sir?
Maybe she knew, maybe she didn't, but fairly recently, police satellite was put right in the back of Jack in the Box there.
The Jack in the Box down there.
Right above the Jack in the Box.
Yeah, our Panther Lake substation has actually been in operation since when, Pat? About 1 year. That office has been up and running. We've had police officers working out of that substation for about the past year. So, which is another good way that we're looking at to combat or to have a presence in your neighborhood, have a presence in our community to help deal with those kind of issues. And the last area that I want to hit on is kind of a good news story. And we were fortunate enough about a month ago to be part of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. There's a young man who lives in the Kent area and is a part of the Kent School District, and he has been fighting leukemia for the past 3 years. And there's two things that Patrick likes or lives for, so to speak, at this age. One is anything to do with the police, and two is anything to do with Legos. So, fortunately, one of our officers, his wife is a teacher in the Kent School District and became aware of Patrick and knew that he liked police and Legoland, so she helped coordinate with the Make-A-Wish Foundation that Make-A-Wish sent him to Legoland in San Diego. But prior to going there, we were able to throw a party for him at the Kent Police Department and make him our little chief for the day. So Commander Camerzell is the person that helped coordinate that event. And there are many things that we deal with in the police department, whether it's crime and shootings and burglaries and break-ins. And every once in a while it is really, really nice to do a really feel-good situation like this to help a young man. So we gave him the send-off party before he went to San Diego, and it was catered by Red Robin. And you can see Patrick and his family members and some of the other folks from the Make-A-Wish Foundation as we sent him off. So he went the following week after our party at the station, and it was just a beautiful Saturday morning, and they brought the SWAT vehicle down, so they got to ride in the tank and got a tour and sit on the motorcycle and go for a ride in the police cars. Patrick had a great party, and then I was told later on that when he went to the airport to get on the plane to go down to San Diego that following weekend, he wore his police department shirt and his police hat as he went down and flew to San Diego. So it was a really good thing and great work by Commander Camerzell to make that happen. So now I'd like to call up Assistant Chief Bourne. We'll talk a little bit about intelligence-led policing and how we do our business, and then you'll hear from some of our commanders.
Good evening, and thank you guys for coming. I'm going to keep this fairly brief, but throughout the night we've talked about intelligence-led policing, ILP. And so I'm going to give you a very brief description of it. We actually have the resident expert somewhere right around here, Commander Padilla, right there. And he actually runs that whole unit and is kind of the engine that makes it run. So I'll give you my best shot, but he's got more information. What this is we have a crime analyst at the Kent Police Department, a civilian, who reads every case report. Let's say you report a burglary and a car theft and an assault. This person reads every case report, and they gather information from those reports, and they combine it together looking for trends, looking for things we can identify, trying to identify, like the chief told you, the one person. You guys in work know the 20-80 rule. 20% of your people account for 80% of your time. In police work, it's more like the 90-10 rule. 10% of the bad guys account for about 90% of our work. So we're looking for those true bad guys that are causing the thing. And let's say on the East Hill of Kent, there's 5 car prowls tonight. Good chance those are all done by one guy. And so if we can take him out, it takes out a huge amount of crime. So we have an analyst who reads all those. All the NRT officers, the neighborhood response team officers that you were introduced to earlier, they read the crimes in their sections. There's sources of other information, patrol officers, detectives, and at the start of every week, that entire group, sometimes as many as 20 police, get together with Commander Padilla, and they go over what's happened the week before, and they try to identify crime trends, and then they come up with plans of action, different ways, and there's a million tools in a police department to deal with this. And they come up with different ways to attack it. Some of it's very traditional, stakeouts and surveillance, and turning informants, stuff like that. Some of it's very innovative. I'm not going to go into that. So that's basically a nutshell of how that works. All that information comes together, and they redo it every week. And it's an intense amount of work. But personally, I think that's probably the reason why we have one of the highest reductions in crime in the state, is because one of the few departments to actually do that, and we've got dedicated officers behind you that are doing that kind of work. During that, during that meeting, commanders that are responsible for various geographic areas within the city are also attending. And they have the responsibility for that geographic area. And so what we're going to do now is introduce you to 3 of those commanders, and they're going to talk briefly about what's going on in their area. The first one's going to be Commander Camerzell, and he is responsible for the East Hill. And he's going to give you just a brief update of what's going on, just to kind of give you a snapshot. And then we'll talk to the 2 of the other commanders.
Hello, like you said, I'm Commander Camerzell. I'm covering both the 2 sector and the 4 sector. If you look at your maps, the entire East Hill. Briefly, I'm just going to cover our biggest problem up on the East Hill is residential burglaries. Fortunately, they've been on a downward trend right now, but we always see during different seasons of the holidays and the summers, we get an uptick in those trends. So we want to keep up the good work and try to stay ahead of that. As he talked about ILP, some of the tools we have, this is just a cut and shows some trends over just the last few weeks of residential burglaries in both the 2 and the 4 area. What you notice now is right now our numbers are relatively low enough that anytime we have a suspect or a crew hit a couple of targets in a relatively short time, we get a little bit of a spike. But fortunately, that's just because the numbers are so low, just a couple of hits will bounce it that way. Another tool, this is the 2 area. This shows us where it happened so we can target areas and see what's most effective so we can apply those resources like Chief Bourne was talking about. On this map, the circles are what happened currently in the week. The week prior are squares, and then 2 weeks ago are triangles, so we can look to see if there's any trends. And then this map is the one of the King Ford, this Panther Lake area here. So this winter, burglaries hit a real high point with us during the holiday season. We're also concerned with summer coming up, especially in this Panther Lake area. So many of our homes are dual income homes, meaning that both adults are at work during the day, and it leaves them especially vulnerable to daytime burglaries. So that combined with a lot of our burglaries are done by juveniles, that when school lets out in the summer, we got empty homes and a lot of unsupervised juveniles, and so that's where we get our summertime peak. So we want to keep up the good work and try to keep ahead of any kind of summertime peak so we don't experience what we had this winter. Since the winter, when we had that problem, we applied some extensive resources to this issue and conducted kind of a multifaceted campaign to try to combat the issue. We identified the patterns and trends in those neighborhoods, like you saw on the maps, the places that were most heavily affected, and got information on certain suspect groups that we thought were working in those areas. Combined with that information, then we were able to do directed patrol emphasis in those areas. And then we created, during the high point, a burglary task force. We did that. We picked some of our best guys out of patrol. We had NRT officers. We had detectives assigned to that. And that task force just solely went after burglaries up on the East Hill and trying to curb that peak. And it was pretty successful. Following that task force to try to sustain that momentum, we continued by having a burglary emphasis group. And it was kind of like a task force, but scaled way down. We had a couple patrol folks, we had an NRT officer, and then we had a detective that didn't do it full time, but assisted with the cases that they generated. And that was led by a patrol sergeant then. And they just really monitored and focused on burglaries in those areas and to help us better direct and coordinate our efforts. And that, again, was highly successful. We also utilized our community education unit, CEU, to get our information out to the neighborhoods. They put out our recent trends and information to the community so they could identify and report suspicious behavior and also do crime preventive measures so that we could prevent these break-ins from occurring. Like the chief said earlier, this wasn't a problem unique to Kent. You probably saw it on the news. From Snohomish County all the way down to Pierce County, everybody's burglaries were going through the roof. It's still going that way throughout the year now. So because it was such a regionalized issue, our detectives went outside of just Kent and started coordinating with some of these other areas to put pieces together and make a much better collaborative response on that. Once we got this all stabilized, we continued on by using directed patrols and also really focusing on our investigations. NRT is a key on that. They're looking for all those critical pieces of information coming out, and we spend a lot of time. We do a lot more as far as processing scenes on these kind of burglaries, especially ones that hit our serial patterns that are the same kind over and over again. So with all that, the outcome we had, several criminal rings with multiple suspects were taken down. They had been identified and arrested, and a lot of property was recovered and returned to owners. Lots of other individual burglars were arrested during that time. And then just recently, due to a citizen calling in about some suspicious subject, we're able to respond. Actually, Officer Nixon in the back, there was one of them that was able to respond to that. Went out, contacted these guys, 2 occupants in a car. They were able to locate it, and it was an unreported burglary. And they were able to put the pieces together of what they had done was just a burglary a minute ago, recovered the property, got it back to the owner. So that was a good success story. And again, it's based on citizens calling in. That's kind of a theme you'll hear from us tonight with intelligence-led policing. In the past month or so, we've kind of had a spike in guns being taken from burglaries. So that's something we do not want to see. But fortunately, with the efforts, out of 3 of these cases, suspects have been identified on that one, and the investigation's pending. And also, we stood up a regional Valley gang enforcement team, and with the investigations they've done, they have tied a lot of these burglaries. We talked about crews doing them, and a lot of these crews are gang-related. And so in their investigations, they've taken off subjects, done search warrants on their houses, arrested them, and in the process we've located property, we've located a lot of guns with those folks, and with taking them into custody, it's actually cleared a lot of the East Hill, Kent burglaries. Some of these guys live in Renton and come into Kent and do crimes, but they're kind of scattered all over. Some are as far away as Seattle, and some of them are our own. But that's had a more reaching emphasis with that VGET task force than we thought. And I'm glad that it's affecting our burglaries in a positive manner. So since this winter when we had the peak, our burglaries now on a weekly rate are about the same as what we were getting on a daily basis during that peak time. So that just gives you a way to reference when we say we've had a reduction in the burglaries, that we're not nearly as bad as what we were before, so we've seen some real positive influence on that. So because of that, I'm pretty proud of the hard work our officers have done in all this, but we've had success due to help from our citizens. Community involvement is vital to us solving these crimes. You guys provide so many more eyes and ears for us. When we talk about we're intelligence-led policing, it deals with intelligence gathering, and just look at the amount of eyes and ears in this room compared to what we have in the police department. You people calling things in and giving us that information is exactly what we need. We're data-driven, so calling 911 and reporting crimes or just reporting suspicious behavior, that data shows us where things are happening and lets us know where we want to apply our resources. You can always help yourself and your neighbors by practicing good crime prevention measures, looking out for each other. Block watch groups are great on this. We have block watch groups. We have business watch groups. So any business owners up here in the East Hill, we can get, there's some in existence, but if you have interest in that, you can get with our CEU, put that together. And within a neighborhood, it just kind of pulls you together. So you're sharing information, you're looking out for each other. And that community, that sense of community, that's what's going to protect you and really help us solve some crimes. So I encourage the community to report suspicious activity and help us in our effort. And I think together we can partner to try to make a safer community. Thank you.
Thanks, Commander Camerzell. Next is going to be Commander Hemmen. He's responsible for the downtown core. I did want to mention one thing about the young lady over here who talked about the profiling thing. That is nothing you have to worry about. Profiling is a term they use for law enforcement only if they think we're picking on someone because they have purple hair or, and we'll get to the question I run through soon. We'll have a question and answer at the end.
It was just the fact that it seemed like I was just looking at a big group and I wasn't sure what I was looking at. And
Okay. Well, and the thing I'm trying to say here is call us. If you feel suspicious, call us. If we have a shooting going on and you have a suspicious person walking down your road, we're not coming. At least not right now. We'll come when we can. We will prioritize. Don't worry, you're not bothering us. But 95% of the time, we'll be coming right away because there's enough of us or whatever for us to go. So please call when you see something suspicious. Here's Commander Camersville, or Commander Hemmon.
Hello. Again, I'm Commander Eric Hemmon. I have the King 5 sector of the city, which is the Valley. Our major concern that we're having in the downtown core has to do with car prowls. And it's in the apartment complexes, it's in the residential areas, and it's some of our business complexes. What we've been doing for that is we've been looking at our statistics. We've been finding out where most of the car prowls are happening, and then we've directed patrols towards those areas. Through those directed patrols, we have been able to identify a couple suspects, and we've been able to get them into custody. And we've also set up some surveillance cameras at some of the other areas so we can try to find suspects that are committing these crimes. One way you guys can all help us, even up on the East Hill or the downtown or on the West Hill, is to be a great witness for us. If you see suspicious activity, please call 911. If you can get us a license plate, vehicle make, a model, a description of the suspect, that'll help us in our investigations. Also, if you can make sure you lock your cars at night, don't leave them unlocked, and take all of your electronics, purses, backpacks, laptops, take them out of your cars at night and when you go into business complexes so people don't want to break into your car. And that's all I got.
And last but not least is Commander Oldie. Come on up here, Commander Oldie. Commander Oldie is responsible for the King 3, which is the West Hill of Kent.
Thank you. Steve Oldie is my name, and I've been told since my district is West Hill on the other side of the Green River, the chances are everybody here is from East Hill. I got to keep it real short. The thing that I want to really emphasize is our successes are a combination of police effort, the community, especially on West Hill, apartment owners, being involved and communicate with each other together. On West Hill years ago, we had a district up there that was really kind of a rough district, and now it has totally turned around. It's still causing us some problems, but it's nothing like it used to be. So when we say to call us on suspicious activity, I want to really send that home. We've all talked about that, but it's so important. If it's suspicious to you, call us. With the burglary thing going on right now, basically what you get is you get people knocking on your door, and they'll come up with some sort of reason, you know, does Billy live here, or I'm selling window cleaner, or whatever it is. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you don't know who that person is, if it smells to you, call us, okay? Because that's what's happening. And my speculation is it's just kind of the economy. The economy's kind of turned around a little bit, so property crimes are going up right now, the car prowls and the burglaries and that kind of thing. So that's what we need to be focused on. But call us. Yes, ma'am.
Is it a high incidence of invasions or just burglaries that they're trying to get a look around the house and they're talking?
I'm sorry, I have a bad cold.
Me too. Is it a high incidence of invasions, or is it just burglaries where they're casing the place and trying to look around and ask the homeowner?
No, the burglaries. Yep, they're after residential burglaries, anything they can carry. You know, jewelry's a hot item right now. It's because of all these jewelry places that are popping up. It's easy to sell the stuff. So you just got to be aware of what's going on in your surroundings and give us a call. You've got a very, very aggressive police department. The officers primarily work the same districts. You've got the NRT officers. They're reading every report. And so we are doing a lot of things that are different from maybe some other jurisdictions that don't have the resources. You got a lot of great officers. I've worked here a lot of years, so I know what I'm talking about. I know you think I'm prejudiced.
Good evening. My name is Sheila Knapp. I supervise evidence and records, and just wanted to go over a software application that was purchased and went live about a month and a half ago. This is accessible through our City of Kent Police Department website. And if you go to our police department and click on Crime Stats, you'll be launched into this crimereports.com website. And what this does for you is if you go to our website and enter an address, so what you see on the screen right here is the downtown core, and I typed in 220 South Avenue 4th Avenue South, which is the police department headquarters. And that's the red icon you see on the screen. What happens is you can check by date the types of crimes that have occurred in your area, and all the crimes that are entered by police officers and by citizens through our crime reporting software are mapped onto this program. And what happens is you can select the crimes and dates. So you can go to date range on the upper part of this and open it up, and you can search by the past 3 days, the past 7 days, the past 14 days, the past 30 days, or the past 60 days, and select the types of crimes you want to see. So there, you can select the mapping. I did 14 days, and you hit apply and close. And then you can select the types of crimes you'd like to see. So the crimes you see on the screen right now are all the crimes that are on our records management system. So you can select by type of crime, breaking and entering, robbery, theft, theft of vehicle, theft from vehicle that was talked about. You can basically property crimes, which are the burglaries that was talked about. So you can select the crimes in the area that you'd like. You can deselect crimes. So what you see up here are little icons, and these icons show each crime. If you hover over an icon and left click on here, you'll see the crime itself. So what I just opened that one icon, and I saw it shows the charge is theft. The date that it occurred is May 25th. It's the 100 block of Ramsey Way. The identifier is the Kent Police case number. And the time that it occurred was military time, so 4:26 p.m. And then the Kent Police Department submitted that crime, the case report that documented that crime. You can submit an anonymous tip by clicking on the red button on the top of the form, the page, excuse me. And you can also create an alert. So if you want to sign up by using an email address, you can create an account in this and then document the types of crimes you want to be notified by weekly or monthly, and you would get an email response based on the type of crimes you selected to be aware of. Now, this was a grant-funded software application that we purchased for 5 years, and we hopefully will continue to find some funding after that 5 years is up. And basically, this gives you an awareness and understanding of the types of crimes that are going on in your neighborhoods, and gives you the ability to beware. And as everybody before me has said, to call in if you see suspicious activity. I'm a resident of Kent as well as I work in Kent. And I'm telling you, if there's a car in my cul-de-sac for more than 24 hours, I'm calling the popo. So just be aware. You might as well do it, because if they come and check it out, then better safe than sorry, I say. And my neighbors do the same thing. So I mean, if I'm watching out for them, they're watching out for me. So any questions on the Crime Reports website? Sir. In this mapping software, 60 days is the furthest you can map. And if you're interested in any one particular case or a series of cases and you wanted more information, then you would just have to complete a public disclosure request, and you would be able to obtain the entire case report to determine what occurred in those events. Any other questions on this mapping software? Sir. There's a number of agencies in the South King County Valley that also have crimereports.com. Renton does, Covington, Des Moines, Federal Way, King County also has it, and Tacoma has it. The only city in the South region right now that isn't up and running is Auburn. So all the other cities around Kent have this application, so you can scroll that map to where you want, and you can see crime in that area as well, using the same date format and the same incident format. Any other questions on this application? Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call up Sarah Wood, our community education specialist, and she's going to talk about an upcoming event we have for this summer.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I am one of 2 community education specialists in our community education unit. My responsibility is coordinating Block Watch and Business Watch and crime prevention programming for the Valley and the West Hill area. And then my coworker, Stacy Judd, would be your contact for the East Hill. However, she is home on maternity leave, having just had twins. So I'm actually your contact for the whole city. So if you have any interest whatsoever in forming a block watch for your neighborhood, you've heard a lot about that tonight. Commander Camerzell touched on that a couple of times during his presentation. Please come and see me and let me know. We have a stack of block watch brochures out on the lobby table with my contact information on there. And we also offer quarterly Block Watch 101 classes where we basically tell you everything you've ever wanted to know about Block Watch, how to form one, how to revitalize one if you've had one before. And we also touch specifically on crime trends, even in more detail than we've done tonight. And so all of us from Neighborhood Response Team and our Community Education Unit are there and provide you with a lot of information and tools. So it may seem overwhelming to start one, but it's really simple. And the main pieces are having a phone email tree set up, and having a map of your neighborhood, getting your neighbors involved, and getting familiar with each other, because the easiest way for you to recognize what is suspicious is to know who lives around you, who lives where, what kind of cars they drive, and that sort of information in your neighborhood. That helps us, and that helps you figure out what's suspicious. Another real core of Block Watch is Operation ID. And what we encourage neighbors and residents to do is to document all of your valuables that you have in your home, so that if you are a victim of burglary, you can help our officers track down electronics by serial number and give us a better report as to what was actually taken after a burglary occurs. So we have all that information at the police department. We're happy to share it with you, and we hope that you'll take advantage of it. A main piece about crime prevention is a lot of bad guys are just lazy, and they look for opportunities. And if you just think about crime prevention as taking those opportunities away from the bad guys and preventing them from committing those crimes, okay? So whatever we can do to our homes, our cars, ourselves to take those opportunities away is what we try to work with you to figure out and do. One event that really helps sort of catapult some neighborhoods into Block Watch is National Night Out. It's the first Tuesday of every August. Who here has participated in the past in Kent? I see some hands. Thank you very much. Happy to see we have about 25 neighborhoods already registered for this year's National Night Out, August 7th. You can go to www.kentnno.com, and we have an online registration there. Sometimes it gets a little wonky, so if you need help, you can call me, and I'll help you through that process. And there's save-the-date cards out on the table in the lobby with more information for you for that. Basically, if you register with us, we'll give you some balloons and T-shirts and giveaways and send you visitors of firefighters and police officers to come to your event to meet and greet with you. So we look forward to sharing National Night Out with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I wanted to make one more announcement, and then we'll get into the question and answer, and that is just this afternoon, we put on our police department website and our police department Facebook page a copy of our annual report. And this is the first annual report that we've ever done at the Kent Police Department, and we're very proud of our first document that we've put out, and it gives you a good understanding or synopsis of our police department and some statistics and that type of information. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to get online and take a look at that. So now, for the last part of our meeting, I would like to open it up for question and answer. And Joe, would you be willing to help us out with the mic? Yes, sir.
Yes, I recently read on an article on the internet. As a matter of fact, it's been within the last 3 or 4 days, and it was describing an effort of cooperation between the Renton, Kent, Auburn police departments, the sheriff's department, and the DEA, and the result was that they had rounded up like 23 gang members or whatever, and I'd like for you to expand on that, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to, but I'm going to ask Commander Padilla, who's in charge of that operation, who ran it, to give some specifics. So, Raf, if you could take the microphone.
Okay. Well, what we did was, let me back up. There was a mention earlier about what the Valley Gang Unit being assembled. Chief was very instrumental in getting that set up. And what we looked at was Seattle had their gang unit, Tacoma and Pierce County had their gang unit, King County has a gang unit, but they kind of focus in North King County, and there really wasn't anybody paying attention in the south end. So Chief Thomas got together with the Valley Chiefs, got them all together, and we agreed, or they agreed, to put together this effort. And it's the first time where we have an opportunity to work together and focus on this area. Okay. So what we have now is a full-time team of about 7 officers made up of several agencies, federal, state, and local. And once a quarter at least, if not more often when we have issues, we're going to mobilize multi-agency task force. And this task force that we did just last week involved 54 officers. And so what we did was, in line with what we do in intelligence-led policing, is we did some research. We know where a lot of these gang members are. We got in touch with Department of Corrections and the King County Intelligence Group, and we went ahead and targeted some high-profile gang members who had warrants, DOC violations, and other issues with the courts and what have you, and we sent these teams out to go look for them. At the same time, we had teams that were working hotspots where there were known gang areas throughout the South King County area, just doing saturation patrols and going out and kind of taking the fight to them in their neighborhoods. And the other part of that was we also had 2 covert operations where our undercover operatives were buying whatever they could, guns, drugs, any illegal contraband stuff that they could find. And that, when it was all said and done, for the first night that we went out, netted 23 arrests of gang members and their associates. So, and many of the officers that made that happen are in this room here tonight. So they did a really good job.
If I can expand, before we go to the next question, I want to expand on one thing. That's outstanding work by Commander Padilla and his group of officers that worked and put that together. But one more that reminded me of a success story, because a lot of the Valley Gang Unit really came into existence after the La Raza lowrider car show shooting that happened on the West Hill. And that caused us to create the Valley Gang Enforcement Team, but it also caused us to assign a detective to the King County Regional Intelligence Group so we could pay attention to those types of activities that are occurring in our community, because we weren't even aware that the La Raza car show was occurring. That event occurred and turned into a shooting. So last Friday, wasn't it last Friday or was it the Friday before last? Friday before last, we got an email from our detective who we assigned to the Regional Intelligence Group that's working directly with the gang unit. And the email said, "Sorry to do this to you on a Friday afternoon, but I just discovered that there's a lowrider car show planned for the East Hill of Kent in the Albertsons parking lot at 208th and the Benson to occur tomorrow." So phone calls were made. Assistant Chief Lowry, Commander Padilla, and the whole group went up, contacted the promoters. The owner of that property did not know that that event was going to take place on their property. Very similar to what happened with La Raza. We were able to contact the right people, tell them that they were not going to have a car show because they did not have a permit and they did not have the proper planning and information. And then the following day, we had officers on location at the scene to ensure that no car show took place. I think that's a huge success for our police department and our organization and our detectives involved to be able to identify some critical criminal intelligence like that and avert a potential significant problem. So once again, great work by our guys, really specifically in this part of town. So, question? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, on those 24 arrests, how many cases are charged or however with something like that? Is
Good question, and the answer is I don't know what the exact total was. The way that we run the operation is that we split up in teams. So there's a King County team, there's a Seattle team, and each of those agencies make their arrests and they go back and file their charges. So ultimately what gets to a prosecutor, I don't know. I can tell you the 23 got in there, and I would be surprised if there was less than 40 cases filed against this group. So, sure.
I was just wondering if the Kent Police Department is doing anything with the Kent School District to educate our kids about gangs in an effort to keep them from getting involved with them.
Tracy, do you want to speak to that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll speak to it. Yeah, we participate in the GREAT program, the Gang Resistance Education and Training, where we hit, I think, over 300 fifth graders in the Kent School District this year, providing it's a 7-week program where we work with fifth graders to try to prevent them from getting into gangs, so we try to get them young. That's the education piece. We have Commander Gurr, who is in the back, is our detective commander, but she's also our liaison to the Kent School District. So she's the chief of the Kent School District Security or Safety Department. And really, it used to be the security department, and it used to be all about very tough security. But as we've worked through that, we've tried to change that security department to a safety department where they really work with the kids, mentor the kids, and help them to deal with those gang-type issues. So it's not specific to the police department, but our commander, who's the chief, works with those school security or school safety officers to help mentor those that need it. And then our police department has assigned 2 police officers as school resource officers to high schools and middle schools in the Kent School District. So we have a strong partnership between the Kent Police Department and the Kent School District to keep our schools and our community safe. So very good question. Sir?
What can we do about abandoned and vacant houses in our neighborhood?
Jason, do you want to talk? Absolutely. Jason or Derek, do you guys want to talk about any abandoned or vacant houses and things that community members can do?
Yeah, one, just as a community, keep an eye on it. If you see issues or people in it that aren't supposed to be there, call immediately. If it's becoming a hazard because there's garbage or there's a rodent problem or that, the city has code enforcement, and you can contact the code enforcement office and we can start taking some actions to deal with it that way. Do you have anything else to add?
So what if these houses are unsecured? I mean, you go up to them and I sometimes go by and I look at them and the door's pushed open, I close it, maybe I lock it. I'm concerned about people, especially coming up summer, that they're going to be using these houses for other things. In fact, if you go down the street here, make a right at the stop sign and drive to 100th Avenue, you pass at least 3 abandoned vacant houses. And they don't look that way because the neighbors are mowing the yard, picking up the trash, but it's just inevitable before long that somebody's going to get in there, and they already been somewhere.
Right, and really what you're describing is a quality of life type issue, and that's specifically what our neighborhood response team is for, and the officer assigned to this area is Officer Jason Nixon. So if you see him, he's the good-looking gentleman there in the back with the, yeah. So after the meeting, and we can get you Jason's phone number and his email address. Okay, perfect. Yes, he's on that information. And you'll want to call him for issues in this area because it's his job to deal with not only crime issues, but quality of life issues. And that truly is what you're talking about there. Okay, yes, sir.
Well, I read where for $15 we can come down and get a belly club. And I was just wondering the thinking about that because I don't think I'd want to get that close to somebody that was attacking me. But what was your thinking on that?
Yeah, the question was for $15 you could come down to the police station to get a club. And the club, it was a misunderstanding because the club that we're talking about is to prevent auto theft, where you put the club on the steering wheel. So we're not going to sell you a club, but it was just a misunderstanding.
In comparison to other towns like Auburn or Renton, do we have more gang members in Kent or do we have less?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer with the specific numbers of gang members. I can tell you when we had the La Raza gang shooting, There were 6 different people involved in that shooting, 6 different gang members that were arrested. Not one of those gang members lived in the city of Kent. Not a lot of people know that. Now, we do have gang members that live in Kent, and we do have issues with gangs, but we address them and we're dealing with them as best we can. I don't know that it's valid for me to sit up and say, this city has more gang members than that city. I think it's a regional problem, it's a community problem, and it's something that we as law enforcement professionals from throughout the region are working on together very closely to address the issue. But I wouldn't say it, I don't think it's fair to say one area has more than the other.
The reason I say that is if you just drive down Benson, boy, I mean, there's so many, they look like gang members. They don't look like, yeah, there's so many. I wouldn't walk down Benson in the afternoon for nothing. I used to 13 years ago, but I'd never do it again. No more.
And I think that goes back, if I can, before we get to the next question, I think that goes back to when I started, when we talk about perceptions, because perceptions of, I wouldn't walk down the Benson now, but I would before, if we looked at the number of crimes that we had 13 years ago compared to the number of crimes now, you would be surprised that we have significantly fewer crimes now than we had then, but the fear is higher, which is why I wanted to show you that graph with the number of crimes. I'm not saying that there is no crime, but the amount of crime now is so much less than it was when people felt it was so safe based upon the data and the numbers. It's interesting. That's all I have to say. Sir?
I know you guys cover a large area and you have a lot of more important things to do. But Canyon View Estates is a senior mobile home. This couple here in front of me, they're block captains. I'm a block captain there. And with the help of the police department coming out to our clubhouse. We've seen an increase of home invasion and burglaries in our 92 unit community, and I don't know if you can give us any insight into what's happening in that community.
Well, I can tell you it's not specific to your community. I can tell you we have experienced issues with residential burglaries not only in the city of Kent, but from Snohomish County to Thurston County along the I-5 corridor. We know that there are groups of people that I think some of them lived in Mount Vernon, and they were just going up and down the I-5, and they would get off into a community and commit burglaries. That's a piece of it, some of that organized crime. There are young kids that are, young adults, old kids that are committing residential burglaries. There's groups of criminals that are abusers of drugs that are committing burglaries and auto thefts. So there are a lot of groups right now. That is the most popular crime that's going on throughout the entire region is residential burglaries. And so it's going on. We're addressing it aggressively, but it's not specific to your unit. It's not specific to the city of Kent. It is a regional problem, and it's a regional issue.
Just wanted to add that thank you guys for everything you're doing. God bless you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to attest to the fact that it isn't just Kent. I have, and am still teaching at an elementary school in South Auburn. I've been there over 20 years. The policeman has come and talked to the staff there. Gangs are rampant down there in South Auburn. And in addition to that, we have owned for years a home, it's a rental now, in a nice neighborhood in Auburn. And the management company just called us and said that it was a daytime break-in. And so, I mean, it's everywhere. Our daughter's in Canada, and she's had break-ins, so. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think the economy has something. Ma'am?
We appreciate the responsiveness of the police department. We appreciate the responsiveness of the police department and also the proactive initiatives that you have. But as residents of our neighborhood, we feel that the crime has reached epidemic proportions. And in order to safeguard our residents, we're going to take action. We've decided to install video surveillance, but we need to know if we need to catch them in the act or simply have their picture on camera for you to take action. So we're trying to decide whether to go to multiple cameras or high-end cameras. But you can see we're ready to put our money behind our problem.
Right, and I appreciate that. I am going to direct you on that to Sarah and Jason Nixon and Sarah Wood to give you specifics on the different cameras. We don't need to catch them in the act. If we have them on video, it gives us investigative leads. The short answer, they can get more in detail. The other part is we would just as much if they're on video, we would like to know, we would like for you to call us so we have an opportunity to catch these guys in the act. If you find it later on video, that's fine. But if somebody sees something, please call us and let's not rely on video only. Other questions?
Not to discount our burglary problem, but what about groups of men standing around looking for somebody to pick them up and give them work? Around Home Depot or Labor Ready? What about, is that even allowed?
Well, it does occur. It's there. It's not criminal activity that we are focused on, that we're working towards directly. Really, our focus is on trying to keep our community as safe as we possibly can. And our resources are directed in that manner. Our way we conduct business is directed and focused primarily to that. Other questions? Thank you, Joe.
I work for the City of Seattle Parks Department, and they have a lot of community centers for kids to do things, and I think that's what we need. I think we need more places for younger kids and school-age kids and teenage kids. I had a teen center when I was growing up. Not that we were any better than any other kids, but we had a place to go to dances, interact with each other and stay out of the streets. So I don't know if the city of Kent has the money or even has the gumption or whatever to maybe give us something else besides that thing down there in the valley, whatever that place is down there, the Commons.
Yeah.
We need more places. That's my opinion.
And I agree with you, and I believe that the Kent City Council agrees with you also, and that is a part of the strategic plan that the city is working toward, because they also want to create urban centers on the East Hill, community centers, the West Hill, in more parts of town, and that's part of the strategy that they're working on to help develop our city as one of the several different strategic plans that they're looking at. So your point is well received, and yes, it is currently being looked at, and we're looking for ways as a city to do that to help make our community better. So very good point. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Could you hold on 1 second? We'll get you the mic. We can't hear you. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I wanted to say that 60 years ago we had Captain Sanislow in the city of Seattle. You probably don't even remember Captain Sanislow because that was before your time. And then they had Officer Friendly. And I remember my kids come home from school and Officer Friendly was at the grade school that day. They thought that was the greatest thing ever, that they had a person, and whatever. So I just wanted to throw that out, that the Officer Friendly and people like that, maybe it's something that, the kids in grade school would recognize, rather than just a good officer coming up there. So,
right, and you make a very good point, sir, and we talked about that, not specifically the Officer Friendly, but with our officers and our partnerships with the Kent School District that are extremely strong. Our SRO, school resource officers, full-time police officers in middle schools and high schools, 2 middle schools and 2 high schools in the city of Kent, and 2 different officers that are working with, I believe, over 350 fifth graders in the Kent School District, specifically those grade schools in the city of Kent. So your point is very well taken, and we do focus a lot on that area. Well, we also have to focus on what's going on in the street, so we try to balance that, but very good point. Any other questions? Yes, sir. We're going to get you a microphone if you would hold on 1 second.
Thank you. I live at 102nd Place over here, right across the street. And when they built this school, they used the property directly to the east of me for a stockpile of dirt. The dirt has been removed, and now it becomes a nightmare at nighttime for traffic in and out of that place over there. We have tried very hard, myself and the neighbors up on the far corner, to get that property closed off because the White House is using it for his junkyard. And the police has been up there many times, a lot of times, and I see them up there almost every single night, not the police, the cars, in that field. I don't know what they're doing. I don't go out there when they're out there. If they come my road, I'm out. But I know they won't shut it off because the school uses that property when they have some overrun of cars. They fill it with schools. Is there any way that the police department can get the city to force them to put a gate, the school, put a gate in there so let the traffic in and out only when they need it?
I can tell you two things. Officer Nixon was reaching for his notebook, so he was writing down the specific information, and he's going to help you with that because that's another quality of life issue in his part of town. And the other point is if you have cars going in there at night or people with problems, call 911 and we will have officers respond. It's not a problem. That's what our job is. We'll do it.
For the time they get here, those guys are gone.
Sometimes they are if the officers are busy,
I
but
know.
sometimes they're not. And if they're not, give us a chance. And I don't want to argue with you, but our police officers need a chance. And when you say, I give up, it's not worth it, you won't get there in time, I guarantee we won't get there in time and we'll never catch them. Yeah. Give us a chance, give our officers an opportunity, and that's the only way we can catch these guys.
But a lot of cases you'll see somebody come in there at night, and then the next day you see the people in the White House going back there, pulling the stuff out.
Right, and
shame.
After the meeting, Officer Nixon,
I can't see him. That's okay.
He'll find you. He sees you. He's got your number. Okay, if we can get that, we have a question over here. Thank you, sir.
I didn't really have a question so much as just kind of to point out, I mean, for those who are kind of concerned or question, you know, the police department in general, I represent a community over on the West Hill, and I just wanted to express my thanks. We have been successful just from, you know, the residents in my community by calling about suspicious activity. Officer Perusa specifically was able to help prevent a crime on our property. More recently, Officer Bierbauer, Buck, Perusa, and I think a few others were able to prevent some burglaries on our property as well, just for being in the area and, you know, identifying the suspects in that region. So I thank you guys for the hard work that you do, and it really does work just by calling in and reporting the suspicious activity, and you guys do a really good job. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And you're probably going to make Commander Oldie feel much better about buying us coffee since he's the West Hill guy after that. So, yes, Jeff.
Yes, I heard a rumor about a pancake breakfast for Chief for a day. Can you please explain a little more about that?
Yes. Do you want to talk about it, Raf? Commander Padilla is our representative for the police department, and we're going to participate in another great program. Raf, if you want to.
So Chief for a Day is a program that several law enforcement agencies get together with, and basically we sponsor a child that has a life-threatening illness or some lifelong disability. And it's been a while since we were able to get involved. This year, Kent's involved, and we sponsored a little boy named Mikey Bishop. And he's a great kid. He's 6 years old. Unfortunately, he was abandoned by his mother, who was drug addicted, and his two sisters. And Mikey is blind. And so we've chosen him to sponsor as our Chief for a Day. It's a pretty big deal that ends in a huge ceremony at the Training Academy in Burien. We do a motor escort for him. We do a little uniform for him. There's a proclamation, and we've got a lot of things scheduled. Here's what we want you to know. We are doing a benefit flapjack breakfast to raise money for him and his needs, the special needs that he has. on the 16th, 2 Saturdays from now, at the Kent Applebee's from 8 to 10. We'd love to have you stop by. Tickets for the breakfast are $10, and it all goes towards Mikey's benefit. So if you could make it, we'd really like you to be there. Appreciate it. You're welcome to do a cash donation. Were we able to post on our Facebook yet?
The email I saw said Kent Foundation, Kent Police Foundation.
Kent Police
Make
Foundation,
donations.
if you want to write a check for a monetary donation, that's great. So, good.
We have
All right.
time for just a couple more questions. Thank you, Raph.
Is it necessary to put, like, no trespassing or beware of dog or anything like that if I have a fenced yard?
I don't know if I want to answer that question. I'm not an attorney, and it depends on who you talk to. So,
Well, if somebody comes on my property without my consent, are they trespassing?
yes, call the police and we'll deal with it. You,
If somebody goes into my yard that's fenced and I've got a dog in there, I mean, I know I'm liable, but I mean, they're ankle biters, but still. They still nip.
I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
They're trespassing and they can't be there and call 911.
Okay.
That's where I'll go. Okay, one last question and then we'll wrap her up.
Well, I just want to know if you have a helicopter.
No, we don't.
So you're not the ones flying over mine.
No, we're not. Okay, well, we had a great crowd show up tonight. I want to thank you guys very much. Have a good night.